Stop for a moment, because the real reason you cannot lose weight has nothing to do with willpower, and everything to do with the habits Japan has mastered to perfection while the rest of the world sleepwalks toward obesity. Listen carefully. Japan has one of the lowest obesity rates on the planet, just 4.5%, while in the United States that figure exceeds 42%. Researchers estimate that by 2030, half of all Americans will be clinically obese. Yet Japan is not dieting. The Japanese do not count calories. They do not starve themselves. They simply follow 25 remarkably simple daily habits that science today confirms as an effective way to reduce body weight, shrink the waistline, and restore metabolic health, without any dieting whatsoever. And here is what should truly shake you up. Harvard warns that metabolic dysfunction is spreading so rapidly that 93% of Americans show signs of poor metabolic health. While the Japanese maintain some of the strongest metabolic profiles in the world. All because of these habits you are about to learn. So if you are tired of feeling stuck, if you have tried every diet that never works, or if you simply want your energy, confidence, and metabolism back, these 25 Japanese habits will change everything. Let us begin with what most people outside Japan completely underestimate. The people of Okinawa, the longest living population on the planet for decades, have practiced the principle of Hara Hachi Bu for centuries. This phrase literally means, eat until you are 80% full. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but from a metabolic standpoint it is a masterstroke. Research on caloric restriction without malnutrition consistently demonstrates improved insulin sensitivity, reduced IGF-1 signaling, lower inflammation markers, and increased mitochondrial efficiency. The Okinawa Centenarian study found that elderly Okinawans consumed approximately 10 to 15% fewer calories than residents of mainland Japan, and significantly fewer than Western populations, while still maintaining high nutritional density in their diets. This small daily deficit compounds into thousands of fewer excess calories per month, all without any conscious dietary restriction. When you stop at 80%, you avoid the insulin spike that comes with overeating, reduce post-meal triglycerides, and prevent the sluggish parasympathetic crash that makes you crave sugar 2 hours later. Here is the key: satiety hormones such as leptin and cholecystokinin lag behind the stomach stretch receptors by roughly 15 to 20 minutes. So when you feel comfortably satisfied but not stuffed, that is precisely the moment to stop. Not when the plate is empty, not when your clothes begin to feel tight. In Japan, meals are served in small bowls, several modest portions instead of one enormous plate, which naturally slows the pace of eating and creates a psychological sense of completion. You are not restricting yourself, you are respecting physiology. Studies on portion control show that reducing meal size by just 20% can lead to a reduction in body weight of 5 to 10% over time without consciously counting calories. That is enormous. And here is what people typically do not realize: chronic moderate caloric reduction improves autophagy, the cellular cleanup process linked to longevity. You are not just losing weight, you are upgrading your biology. The key rule: pause mid-meal and ask yourself, if I stop now, will I still feel comfortable? If yes, you are exactly where you need to be. The next thing that transforms the entire metabolic response of the body is soup. In Japan, soup is not a side dish. It is a strategy. A bowl of miso soup before or alongside a meal completely changes your body's response. Warm, water-rich foods increase gastric distension, meaning you feel full faster with fewer calories. Multiple studies published in the journals Appetite and Physiology and Behavior show that beginning a meal with low-calorie soup can reduce total calorie intake by up to 20%. But most people miss the most important part: traditional Japanese miso soup is fermented. That means probiotics. That means improved diversity of the gut microbiota. And we now know that gut bacteria directly influence fat storage, appetite hormones, and insulin sensitivity. Miso contains beneficial strains that support the production of short-chain fatty acids in the gut, compounds such as butyrate that improve metabolic health and reduce inflammation. In addition, the seaweed in miso soup provides iodine and fucoxanthin. A carotenoid studied for its ability to enhance fat oxidation by stimulating the expression of the UCP1 protein in white adipose tissue. That is thermogenesis, natural thermogenesis. And because soup is eaten slowly, it forces a measured pace. You cannot hurriedly gulp down hot broth. It creates rhythm. In Japan, meals are structured, not chaotic. Warm liquids also stimulate the vagus nerve, promoting parasympathetic activation, the state of rest and digestion. When you are relaxed, digestion improves. When digestion improves, nutrient absorption increases. When absorption increases, food cravings decrease. Another habit that requires no grueling workouts whatsoever is walking immediately after eating. In Japan, particularly among older adults, a gentle walk after a meal is almost a cultural instinct, and science is finally catching up. A 2022 meta-analysis in sports medicine showed that even 2 to 5 minutes of light walking after meals significantly reduces post-meal glucose spikes compared to sitting passively. 10 minutes produces an even better result. Why does this matter? Because spikes in blood sugar trigger insulin surges. Insulin is a storage hormone. Chronically elevated insulin promotes fat deposition and blocks fat burning. When you walk after eating, your muscles contract and act like glucose sponges, pulling sugar from the bloodstream without requiring large amounts of insulin. That means less stored fat and better metabolic flexibility. It does not require changing into workout clothes. No gym is needed. Simply walk around the block or down the hallway. Make it automatic. This single habit, repeated 3 times a day, can dramatically reduce fat accumulation over several months. And it does not feel like dieting. It feels like living. When people say, eat more vegetables, they usually mean tossing a few leaves onto a sandwich. But that is not what Japan does. Japanese meals are built around multiple methods of vegetable preparation: pickled, braised, blanched, lightly sautéed. Fiber intake in the traditional Japanese diet ranges from 18 to 25 grams per day, and sometimes higher in rural areas, primarily from vegetables, seaweed, and legumes. High-volume foods increase satiety through mechanical stretching and fiber fermentation in the gut. But here is what is often overlooked: Japanese vegetables are generally lightly dressed, not drowned in sauces or cheese. Just rice vinegar, sesame seeds, a little soy sauce. This keeps energy density low. Energy density is everything in weight management. See vegetables such as wakame and hijiki add soluble fiber that slows digestion and improves the lipid profile. Daikon aids digestion through natural enzymes. Bitter melon contains compounds that may improve glucose metabolism. These are not random side dishes. They are metabolic tools. And because a meal includes several small plates, you psychologically experience abundance, which reduces the tendency to overeat later. Another powerful distinction: Japan consumes significantly more fish per capita than most Western nations. Fish provides high-quality protein with omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. These fats reduce inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and may enhance fat oxidation. Chronic inflammation is tightly linked to obesity and metabolic syndrome. Reducing inflammation means easier fat mobilization. Studies in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition show that higher omega-3 intake correlates with reduced abdominal fat and improved lipid profiles. Fish protein is also highly satiating. It raises levels of peptide YY and GLP-1, hormones that signal fullness. And since traditional Japanese fish dishes are grilled, steamed, or served raw rather than deep-fried, you avoid excess oxidized vegetable oils. Another underappreciated benefit: iodine from seafood supports thyroid function, and the thyroid regulates metabolic rate. An underactive thyroid means sluggish fat burning. When fish replaces heavier meats several times a week, caloric density drops, nutritional density rises, and the inflammatory burden decreases. Green tea is not just antioxidants. It is thermogenic signaling. Japan drinks green tea daily, often multiple times per day. Green tea contains catechins, particularly EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, which has been extensively studied for its role in fat oxidation. Research published in Obesity and the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition indicates that green tea extract can moderately increase energy expenditure and enhance fat burning, especially during moderate physical activity. But even without exercise, regular green tea consumption correlates with a lower percentage of body fat in epidemiological studies. EGCG may inhibit catecholomethyltransferase, COMT, prolonging the action of norepinephrine, a hormone involved in fat breakdown. And here is what most people ignore: replacing sugary beverages with unsweetened green tea eliminates hundreds of daily liquid calories. Liquid calories are dangerous because they bypass satiety mechanisms. In Japan, soda consumption is significantly lower than in the United States. That substitution alone changes the trajectory of weight. Warm green tea also promotes mindful pacing during meals. You sip, you slow down, you create pauses, and metabolically, those pauses matter. Over time, daily green tea consumption has been associated with reduced accumulation of visceral fat, the dangerous fat surrounding the organs. The traditional structure of a Japanese meal follows the principle of ichi-ju san-sai, 1 soup, 3 side dishes, and a staple such as rice. And before you dismiss this as merely a cultural tradition, understand this: structure eliminates overeating. When your meals follow a predictable format, you eliminate impulsive food decisions. You are not standing in front of the refrigerator negotiating with yourself. You are following a system. Research in behavioral nutrition shows that dietary structure reduces caloric intake by minimizing decision fatigue. And decision fatigue is a real phenomenon. The more choices you make throughout the day, the more likely you are to default to high-calorie, hyperpalatable foods. Ichi-ju san-sai naturally balances macronutrients without obsessive tracking. One dish is usually protein, often fish or tofu. 2 are vegetable-based. One may include fermented foods, such as pickled vegetables. And the soup adds hydration and volume. This composition slows glucose absorption, improves satiety, and increases fiber intake, without counting a single calorie. Variety also stimulates sensory satisfaction. When your brain experiences multiple textures and flavors in small portions, it registers completion. Unlike eating an enormous bowl of 1-calorie-dense food, you are far less likely to overeat, because sensory monotony drives continued eating. Your gut microbiome influences how much fat you store. Traditional Japanese diets include fermented foods daily: miso, natto, tsukmono, pickled vegetables, soy sauce, fermented tofu. And this is not accidental. Fermented foods introduce beneficial bacteria and support microbial diversity. Studies published in Cell and Nature Medicine have shown that increased microbiome diversity is associated with lower levels of visceral fat and improved metabolic markers. Natto is particularly rich in Bacillus subtilis and contains nattokinase, which supports cardiovascular health. A more diverse microbiome produces more short-chain fatty acids, such as butyrate and propionate, which improve gut barrier integrity, reduce inflammation, and regulate appetite hormones such as GLP-1 and PYY. In plain terms, you feel full for longer. And here is something rarely discussed: certain gut bacteria extract more calories from the same food. If your microbiome is unbalanced, you may literally harvest more energy from identical meals compared to someone with a healthier gut. That means 2 people can eat the same diet and gain different amounts of weight. Fermented foods help shift that balance. A small serving daily, that is all it takes. Another concept that Western diets have almost entirely abandoned is seasonal eating. In Japan, eating with the seasons is not marketing, it is tradition. Spring brings bamboo shoots and light greens. Summer emphasizes cooling foods such as cucumbers and cold soba. Autumn offers root vegetables and mushrooms. Winter favors warming stews and fish. This seasonal variation naturally alters caloric intake and macronutrient balance throughout the year. When you eat seasonally, you unintentionally cycle your energy intake. Research suggests that mild caloric fluctuation may support metabolic flexibility. Your body's ability to efficiently switch between burning carbohydrates and fat. Constant high-calorie food availability year-round disrupts that flexibility. Seasonal produce is also more nutrient-dense when harvested at peak ripeness. Higher micronutrient density improves satiety signals and reduces cravings driven by deficiency. Japanese cuisine emphasizes the concept of shun, food eaten at the peak of its season. This intensifies flavor, reducing the need for heavy sauces or added fats. The next point sounds aesthetic, but it is actually neurological. Japanese meals are visually deliberate, color contrast, small bowls, neat presentation. Research in sensory science shows that visual appeal influences perceived satiety and satisfaction. When food is beautifully arranged, you eat more slowly, chew more carefully, and notice flavors. This enhances the cephalic phase response, the early digestive reactions triggered by sight and smell. These reactions properly prime enzymes and insulin, improving nutrient handling. Smaller plates, widely used in Japan, also create portion control illusions. Japanese tableware tends to be compact, limiting portion size without conscious restriction. Since meals are served in several small portions rather than on one enormous plate, overeating requires deliberate refilling. That friction reduces mindless excess. Even chopsticks play a role, they slow consumption compared to forks. Slower eating enhances leptin signaling and reduces caloric intake, allowing satiety hormones to catch up. Traditional Japanese meals often involve sitting on tatami mats or maintaining upright posture at low tables. This posture encourages slower movements and more intentional eating. Slouching compresses the abdominal organs and can impair digestion. Upright posture improves diaphragmatic breathing, which stimulates the vagus nerve, essential for optimal digestion and satiety signaling. Japanese mealtime culture emphasizes calm. Sitting with full attention, without eating while driving, without eating standing in the kitchen, without multitasking. Studies show that distracted eating increases caloric intake by up to 15 to 25% in subsequent meals, because the brain does not fully register the experience. When meals are ritualized, your brain encodes completion, which reduces later snacking. Even something as small as saying "itadakimasu" before eating creates a pause. A psychological shift into a state of awareness. And awareness is the opposite of overeating. In Japan, people rarely end meals with heavy, sugary desserts. Instead, there is the concept of kuchi sabishii, which literally means lonely mouth, a small desire to taste something after a meal, but not a full-blown dessert indulgence. This concept completely changes the psychology of post-meal eating. Instead of cakes, cookies, or 600-calorie treats, the Japanese typically satisfy this tiny craving with fruit, a small sweet bean confection, a piece of mochi the size of 2 fingers, or lightly sweetened green tea. The metabolic advantage of this approach is that such choices do not create the massive glucose spikes that Western desserts produce. According to a 2023 review in Nutrients, controlling post-meal glucose spikes is one of the strongest predictors of long-term weight stability. Traditional Japanese sweets are built on red beans, rice flour, or matcha, whole ingredients with slower absorption curves. The act of choosing small, minimally processed options rewires your reward pathways. People who switch to these light mini desserts often reduce their total daily sugar intake by 30 to 50%, which directly affects fat accumulation, especially around the abdomen. If you are looking for one Japanese habit that feels almost unfairly effective, it is incorporating konjac and its noodle form, shirataki, into meals. Made from the konjac root, these foods contain extremely few calories, often fewer than 10 per serving, and are incredibly rich in glucomannan, one of the most viscous and powerful soluble fibers ever studied. This fiber expands in the stomach, slows digestion, stabilizes blood sugar levels, and significantly increases feelings of fullness. A landmark meta-analysis published in the Journal of Obesity showed that glucomannan supplementation alone can produce meaningful weight loss without any other lifestyle changes. Shirataki noodles replace traditional wheat noodles in dishes where people want volume without calories. When you swap regular noodles, averaging 180 to 250 calories per serving, for shirataki noodles with virtually 0 calories, you create a massive caloric reduction without shrinking the portion size. What makes konjac especially powerful is its impact on gut health. Glucomannan acts as a prebiotic, feeding beneficial bacteria, improving metabolic markers, and indirectly supporting fat loss. It also lowers LDL cholesterol and slows carbohydrate absorption, making post-meal glucose curves dramatically smoother. The Japanese bento box is not simply a beautifully packed lunch. The bento structure enforces portion balance, nutritional diversity, and caloric control without any dietary regime. Each section is intentionally small: a protein portion, 1 or 2 vegetable portions, a small starch serving, and possibly a tiny sweet or pickled side. The size of each compartment automatically limits overeating. Researchers from the University of Tokyo published findings showing that people who eat from compartmentalized containers consume fewer total calories compared to those served food on regular plates, because the brain encodes each section as complete. The compartments also enforce nutritional diversity, which is crucial. Nutrient-dense meals produce stronger satiety signals, reducing cravings later on. Japanese bentos emphasize color: red tomatoes, yellow egg, green spinach, white rice or tofu, orange carrot. The nutritional value of this variety is enormous. More color typically means more micronutrients, antioxidants, and fiber. Samporu, the hyper-realistic plastic food displays you see outside Japanese restaurants, are not merely marketing. They are portion cues. Research in food behavior shows that visual expectations of portion size strongly influence actual consumption. If you think you are supposed to receive a mountain of food, you will overeat, even if you are already full. But when realistic portions are displayed everywhere, your brain normalizes them. Japanese samporu portions are significantly smaller than Western equivalents, roughly 30 to 40% smaller on average. That means diners arrive at a restaurant already calibrated for moderation. People overlook this, but excess weight does not begin at the table. It begins in the brain long before food arrives. Normalized visual portion cues retrain appetite regulation. Japanese samporu quietly resets that meter downward. Westerners, by contrast, grow up surrounded by oversized everything. Super large sodas, giant bags of snacks, mega meals. When enormous becomes the norm, your internal portion meter resets to dangerous levels. A traditional Japanese breakfast is not sweet porridge, a donut, or an enormous coffee loaded with cream and syrup. It is protein-focused, savory, balanced, and low-glycemic. Grilled fish, miso soup, rice, pickled vegetables, tamagoyaki, a rolled egg omelette, and sometimes natto. This combination stabilizes blood sugar for several hours. Protein in the morning increases thermogenesis by 15 to 30% and suppresses ghrelin, the hunger hormone, far more effectively than carbohydrates alone. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Nutrition showed that high-protein breakfasts significantly reduce late-night cravings and overall caloric intake. The cultural advantage of a Japanese breakfast is that it is deliberately not sweet. Western breakfasts train your brain to expect a sugar hit every morning, creating an anticipatory dopamine response that makes you crave sugar throughout the day. In Japan, savory mornings keep insulin low, craving stable, and energy steady. You are not riding the blood sugar roller coaster. In Japan, rice, not bread, is the default carbohydrate. White rice consumed alongside fiber-rich vegetables, pickled foods, or miso soup, as is almost always the case in Japan, produces a significantly lower glycemic impact than bread consumed with fats or sugars. Rice is typically eaten plain, without butter, fats, or sweet spreads. Meanwhile, a single slice of Western bread often contains emulsifiers, oils, and preservatives that increase inflammation and accelerate digestion, causing glucose spikes and subsequent insulin surges. Research from the Asia-Pacific Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that Japanese meals centered around rice, even white rice, produced more stable post-meal glucose curves compared to Western bread-based breakfasts. Rice is also volumetrically satisfying. You cannot eat a large bowl of rice as quickly as 2 slices of bread, and still feel hungry. Its water content expands in the stomach, activating satiety receptors earlier. Bread-based meals also tend to invite overeating because they are energy-dense and hyperpalatable. Rice-based meals encourage balance because they are part of a broader meal composition that includes vegetables, protein, and fermented sides. People underestimate just how powerful eating pace is as a tool for weight management. In Japan, chopsticks naturally enforce slower, more deliberate bites, and this single mechanical behavior triggers a cascade of metabolic advantages. Research shows that slow eating increases levels of GLP-1 and PYY, hormones responsible for satiety, while simultaneously reducing ghrelin, the hormone that stimulates hunger. When you eat with chopsticks, you physically cannot shovel food in as quickly as with a fork or your hands. That slower pace gives the brain the 20 minutes it needs to register fullness before overeating occurs. But chopsticks also change bite size. Smaller, more frequent morsels create what psychologists call microsatiation events, where the brain receives repeated sensory feedback signaling that food is plentiful and satisfaction is approaching. Japanese studies on chopstick use show a measurable reduction in total caloric intake per meal, on average 15 to 20%, even when people are allowed to eat as much as they want. In addition, chopsticks engage fine motor skills, which pulls you out of the stress-eating autopilot mode. Eating becomes intentional rather than impulsive. One of the deepest cultural distinctions between Japanese and Western eating habits is this: in Japan, food is respected as nourishment, not used as emotional entertainment. In the United States and Europe, people frequently turn to food when bored, stressed, anxious, or lonely. They snack in front of Netflix, munch while scrolling social media, or reward themselves with high-calorie treats after a long day. In Japan, a stronger cultural boundary is maintained between emotions and eating. Meals are ritualized. Gratitude is expressed before eating, itadakimasu, and after, gakisasama. There is a mindful rhythm, quiet appreciation, and intentional chewing. Rates of emotional eating are significantly lower in Japan, and this directly correlates with lower obesity rates. A 2021 study in appetite showed that emotional eating is one of the strongest predictors of weight gain. Even stronger than macronutrient composition. Japanese mealtime etiquette: no eating while walking, no eating during commutes, no eating while multitasking, helps prevent unconscious overeating. When meals are intentional, your brain actually remembers eating. You experience satiety, both psychological and physiological. In Japan, dinner is traditionally the lightest meal of the day. And this aligns perfectly with modern chronobiology research, which shows that your metabolism follows a daily rhythm, stronger in the morning, weaker in the evening. After sunset, insulin sensitivity drops dramatically. A large dinner leads to higher glucose spikes, greater fat storage, and disrupted sleep, all factors that amplify weight gain. The Japanese typically eat earlier in the evening, often between 6 and 7 p.m., and keep dinner simple. Soup, fish, pickles, vegetables, and perhaps a small bowl of rice. Nothing heavy, nothing greasy. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that consuming the majority of calories at night leads to a significantly higher rate of fat storage, up to 50% more compared to consuming the same calories earlier in the day. Another study from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem demonstrated that shifting calories to earlier in the day improved weight loss even without reducing total intake. Light dinners also improve sleep quality, and sleep is one of the most powerful regulators of weight. Poor sleep raises ghrelin, lowers leptin, and intensifies food cravings the next day. Walking in Japan is not exercise. It is simply life. The Japanese walk to the train station, to the store, to school, between errands, and after meals. The average Japanese adult takes between 6,500 and 8,500 steps per day compared to the American average of roughly 3,000 to 4,000. That difference, those quiet, unglamorous extra steps, amounts to approximately 300 to 500 additional calories burned per day depending on pace, weight, and terrain. Over the course of a year, that easily translates to 5 to 7 kilograms of fat burned. Without dieting, without gym memberships, and without any conscious effort. Research published in The Lancet and JAMA Internal Medicine shows that consistent light to moderate activity stabilizes blood sugar, reduces visceral fat, improves digestion, and increases insulin sensitivity. This is especially true for walking performed throughout the day, rather than during a single concentrated workout. Japanese urban design also encourages walking. Narrow streets, limited parking, efficient public transit, and neighborhoods built around walkability. This ongoing low-intensity movement keeps the body in a fat-burning zone for extended periods. Unlike high-intensity workouts that sharply raise hunger hormones and can lead to overeating, walking lowers cortisol, improves hormonal balance, and reduces emotional cravings. In Japan, portions are modest, not tiny, just reasonable. And culturally, no one expects more. There are no endless refills, no enormous plates, no gallon-sized sodas. Japanese convenience stores, restaurants, and home kitchens follow a portion norm fundamentally different from Western expectations. Bento boxes are compact. Ramen bowls are portioned. Packaged snacks come in small servings designed to satisfy, not overwhelm. Behavioral nutrition research confirms that people eat first with their eyes. If you are served a large portion, you will almost always eat more. Often 30 to 50% more, without feeling any fuller, simply because the visual cue tells the brain that this is the correct amount. Japanese culture avoids this phenomenon by establishing smaller units as the standard, and when the baseline serving is modest, overeating becomes far less likely. Seaweed is one of the most widely consumed foods in Japan, yet one of the least utilized in Western diets. The metabolic advantages of seaweed are enormous. First, seaweed contains fucoxanthin, a marine carotenoid shown in numerous studies, including research from Hokkaido University, to enhance fat oxidation, particularly in stubborn white adipose tissue. It stimulates the expression of the UCP1 protein, which improves thermogenesis, effectively allowing the body to burn more calories at rest. Seaweed is also incredibly rich in iodine, which supports optimal thyroid function. Since the thyroid regulates metabolic rate, insufficient iodine can lead to a slow metabolism, weight gain, fatigue, and impaired fat burning, problems extremely common in Western populations but rare in Japan. Varieties of seaweed such as wakame, kombu, and nori also supply soluble fiber that slows digestion, stabilizes blood sugar, and feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Soluble fiber increases satiety and reduces the absorption of dietary fats, making it a natural appetite regulator. Research from the British Journal of Nutrition found that seaweed fiber can reduce fat absorption by up to 75% in certain meals. Seaweed is not a garnish. It is a hidden metabolic tool that Japan has quietly mastered for centuries. One of the most powerful habits in Japanese food culture is beginning meals with vegetable salads, pickled vegetables, boiled greens, seaweed salads, or lightly dressed dishes such as blanched spinach. Research from Penn State and numerous Japanese institutions shows that eating low-calorie vegetables before the main portion of a meal reduces total caloric intake by 15 to 30%. Why? Because foods rich in fiber and water fill the stomach early, activate stretch receptors, and appetite naturally decreases before higher-calorie dishes arrive. But there is more. Vegetable preloading reduces glucose spikes by slowing carbohydrate absorption. Stable blood sugar means less insulin released, which means less fat stored, especially around the abdomen. Japanese vegetable starters are lightly seasoned, no heavy dressings, no creamy sauces, no sweet toppings, just vinegar, sesame seeds, dashi broth, or a touch of soy sauce. This keeps calories incredibly low while maximizing flavor and satisfaction. By the time the main course arrives, overeating has become almost impossible. And finally, the most important habit. The one that ties every other habit together. Washiku, the traditional Japanese dietary philosophy, is recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage because it represents a complete, balanced, and harmonious way of eating. Washiku emphasizes seasonality, diversity, natural flavors, respect for food, and balance among colors, textures, and nutrients. But here is why it matters for weight loss. The principles of Washiku naturally limit caloric density while maximizing nutritional density. Meals consist of many small portions, predominantly plant-based, paired with lean proteins, fermented foods, rice, and broth. This format creates a perfect combination of satiety, slow digestion, hormonal stability, and nutritional satisfaction. Washiku meals are high in fiber, probiotics, antioxidants, minerals, and phytonutrients, while containing little added sugar or saturated fat. This combination supports gut health, reduces inflammation, improves insulin sensitivity, and dramatically reduces the likelihood of overeating. A 2020 study in nutrients found that adherence to Washiku principles correlated with a lower BMI, smaller waist circumference, and better metabolic markers even among younger adults. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of Washiku is psychological. Meals are treated as rituals, not rushed inconveniences. This naturally promotes mindfulness, slower eating, and a healthier relationship with food. Washiku is not a diet. It is a worldview. It is a food ecosystem that Japan has refined over centuries. And it is one of the main reasons Japan maintains one of the lowest obesity rates in the developed world. There you have them, 25 Japanese habits that help one of the slimmest and healthiest nations in the world stay in shape without any dieting. If even one of these habits takes root in you, your metabolism, your energy, and your waistline will change faster than you think. And now, the truth that no one wants to admit. Every year, millions of people begin a new diet, and 95% of them regain all the lost weight within 12 months. Diets fail. Habits do not. Japan proves it. The country's obesity rate remains below 5%, while the rest of the world is rapidly surpassing 40%, and the gap continues to grow every single year. If you want to break out of that trend, if you want your body to finally work with you rather than against you, start applying these small daily shifts. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Your metabolism responds to what you repeat, not to what you promise yourself.